Yeah.
Unique New York.
Have you ever wished Kurt Angle to wish your significant other a happy birthday? Have you ever wanted Jake the Snake Roberts to wish you condolences on the passing of a loved one?
Have you ever wanted anyone in your life to be wished a solemn and dignified Ramadan by the Honky Tonk Man?
Well, head on over to faam.us. That's FAAM.us. And you can get all these things and more. Get Kurt Angle to tweet you happy birthday if you're lonely enough. But when you do, make sure to use our code FUDPODCAST, F-U-D podcast, and give us a little kickback. Again, last FM. What the fuck? FAM.us, FUD podcast. Now, our feature presentation.
Lucha!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mucho Lucha, episode 3. I'm Tyler Fudge, and I'm going to sit down with Ryan from the Gully Blanchard podcast today, and we're going to talk Lucha Underground. Actually, we talked Lucha Underground. We ended up veering off and talking about NXT, but it's a podcast. Who cares? Before we get into it, though, guys, make sure you check out the Gully Blanchard podcast on iTunes, and you can follow the Federation on Twitter, at the Federation. You can find us on Facebook, the Federation Podcast. You can go to mofudge.com. You'll find any podcast you need. Not any podcast you need, but we have 4 or 5 podcasts up there. All are entertaining in their own rights. Go check those out. And also, guys, do not forget the contest that the Federation has going on up until this Thursday. Okay, this Thursday is the end. We'll be recording a show and we'll announce the winner. So, all you have to do, though, is hashtag the SmackDown 6 and send it to the Federation on Twitter. So basically, type into your Twitter machine at the Federation, hashtag SmackDown 6. Whether you have 6 as a number or 6 as a letter, doesn't matter. Just do it anyways, guys. You'll get the Federation mystery box. You have no idea what's in it. I know what's in it. I think you guys will enjoy it. You'll at least get a nice little chuckle out of it. But without further ado, here's Ryan from the Gully Blanchard podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Federation Podcast, third episode of Mucho Lucha, where I sit down with a different co-host every week to discuss Lucha Underground. This week, I'm sitting down with Ryan from the Gully Blanchard Podcast to discuss the 4th episode of Lucha Underground. Welcome to the Federation Podcast, Ryan.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Anytime. Well, I know I was going through Twitter one day, and I was like, I didn't hear your podcast first. Is the name of the of your Twitter account is what I noticed first, Gully Blanchard. I was like, oh, I gotta follow that guy. And then I followed you and listened to your podcast, and I really enjoy your stuff. So,
thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things that people get a lot is they want to know the where the name comes from and where it stems. That is something that's been catching a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's something that I was going to ask. Is there a story that stems from the name?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was in my early teens, there was a kind of a New York hip hop sound that was kind of coming up, and
you're talking like the P Diddy, Puff Daddy stuff.
A little bit after that, yeah, it was a little bit after that, but that started becoming really popular, and that was the front of the name was kind of a slang term they used to say something was either cool or good or what have you, and that was always something that my friends and I would joke about. And then Tully Blanchard, when I was a kid, was one of the first wrestlers that I gravitated towards because we got a little bit of NWA where I lived in Northern California. We got a lot of WWE, but something was always very captivating about him. And then the older I get, the more I kind of understand what I'm watching and what these guys are portraying. I found myself gravitating towards, your Tully Blanchard, your Barry Windhams from that Southern style. So was looking for a name for the podcast and couldn't come up with one because seemingly everything was taken. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just stick to this. And it worked, and I kind of tested it. No one else had it, so it went from there.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I immediately gravitated just because of the name. And it's a pretty cool thing you got going there, dude. So what's your first experience with Lucha Underground? Like, did you come in late? Or have you been like one of those day one fans kind of deal? What has it been?
I knew what it was in the beginning, and it's tough because with a lot of TV shows that I like to do from beginning to end, like if I don't, it's hard for me to catch up on shows like halfway through and then feel like I'm as invested in it. So I heard really good things about season 1, and it just, I wasn't able to get to it before it came off TV. I wasn't able to record it. So I know season 2 had debuted recently, and I was like, I gotta find a way to make sure that I'm recording this thing because this is something that everybody's talking about. And I think, the general theme of modern Western professional wrestling has been kind of down lately, aside from NXT. So I think a lot of people are looking for alternatives like myself. And I was like, I got to see what this is, see what the hype is. It's kind of like a new restaurant. Like everyone's talking about this new restaurant. Yeah, you want to see how the food is. And you go from there, and I checked out the first episode of season 1, and I was like, I don't entirely know what the characters are. I don't know the backstory, but I know I was entertained for an hour, and the mark of any good restaurant is, would you eat there again? And this was the same thing. I was like, I want to watch more of what this is because it's produced entirely different. The layout's different. I'm enjoying what I'm watching. The characters are interesting, and it was really entertaining.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head for me too as well. There, it's I started I was going to start watching from the very beginning. Didn't know that there was something other than the Spanish version of it. So I watched the first couple episodes. It was all Spanish. I was like, yeah, no, I can't keep up on this. So I stopped. I came back 3/4 through the first season, and I've been a fan ever since. And I like the analogy with the restaurant. I've never heard it used that way.
Yeah, it's something that's different. It's something that's interesting. Like the beginning of season 2, they were talking about with Vampiro in the car in the desert area, and I'm like, I don't entirely get the backstory of it, but I just found the overall production and the visual aspect of it really entertaining, and it was something that was entirely different than what's on in North America or in the general area where I live right now, and sometimes different's good, sometimes different isn't always good, but in this case I was very intrigued with what I saw from the beginning and wanted to continually watch it. So I've made it a point this year to catch up on season 2, and I want to be a part of kind of what everyone's watching, and I find it to be very interesting and very intriguing.
Yeah, I second that thought completely. Let's go up to the first scene of the show. It opens with Ivelisse barging into Katrina's office, announcing she wants a rematch for the Trios title that her, Angelico, and Son of Havoc lost at Ultima Lucha to Disciples of Death. Katrina states that there are no automatic rematches in her temple, and in fact, she feels that Ivelisse should feel lucky that Mil Muertes showed her mercy in the match in the first episode of season 2. So tonight, they'll have to face a mystery team that has arrived to the temple, basically to prove their worth. I can't remember, did they announce who the mystery team was beforehand, or was it the match came and we found out it was Chavo, Castro, and Cisco?
If they did, I missed the introduction to it.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
Yeah, if it did happen, it might have slipped me. But yeah, I found that intro to be really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's a lot in the way that it's filmed too. Hey, it's that grindhouse movie style, hard cut, shaky camera. It's really it's different. It's completely different from anything in any wrestling company right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really intrigued me well with the dialogue between those two characters is it does seem like you're watching a movie, like you said, with the grindhouse feel and the shaky camera setup. It does feel like you're watching a movie the way those two interact, and there's backstory to it. And yes, they do, their emphasis is wrestling, but their overall production and display of it, you kind of feel like you're watching a movie and watching a wrestling show at the same time. Yeah. Which is really interesting, and I enjoy the visual aspect of seeing Mil Muertes at the top of the temple, so to speak, overlooking his castle like a king overlooking his castle. I think that really adds to the aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That visual itself that they've added to the second season of Mil Muertes up there is quite an awe-inspiring aspect, if you ask me. It's just to have, every wrestler or lucha that comes down to the ring, they're always focused on Mil Muertes once they get into the ring because everybody wants that title. So
yeah,
it's a nice little spot there. No, go for it.
I was going to say, and I like, it took me a second to kind of warm up to the intergender aspect of those kind of matches, especially the Mil and Ivelisse match in the first episode of season 2, and then even now with with Chavo and his crew, going over Ivelisse and the other two. It took me a while to be okay with it, but it's done, as tastefully as you can do that, and within the construct of the match, they do a very good job telling a good story.
Yeah, if you tell the story in an intergender match, I have no problem with it. But I didn't really like the Mil Muertes one where he's just choking her and beating the living piss out of her. That was a little bit much. I'm not like disgusted with it or anything, or like mom's against fucking Mil Muertes and stuff like that. But it's just a soft stuff. Like I look at it from somebody else is going to look at that and probably be like, oh fuck that show. But,
yeah, I can see how that can be polarizing, on both ends, because on one side it's not something, again, and that's kind of one of the things that makes the show different, is that it's not something you see, in North American wrestling. You don't see a lot of intergender stuff, and then to see that, it took me a while, to understand kind of like, okay, this isn't just guy beats up girl and girl sits there. Like to me, in the construct of a match of Ivelisse against Mil Muertes or Ivelisse, in that 3-person tag match, they still found a way to tell a compelling story.
Oh,
I think if you can find a way to do that, I think you'll still have fans invested, and you will get those fans that a guy power slamming a girl or a guy kicking a girl in the face is going to turn them off. But
yeah, you always
presenting it. Yeah, they're presenting it relatively well.
Yeah, and they did a good thing too with adding Ivelisse into this match. Basically, the first part of it was isolating Ivelisse from everybody else. So you isolate the quote-unquote weakest of the three. It might sound sexist of me, but, they always say, she's a woman, she's not as strong as the rest of the guys. So if you isolate her from the rest of her partners, you should be able to win. And it also gives good heel heat to the three against, because they're isolating the woman. They're targeting the woman and not the other two males. So it adds a little bit to the story, makes it worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I like the overall interaction with Chavo in there too. I think he added a lot to the match.
Oh yeah.
I'm impressed with this. Chavo's been. From what I heard, he was on season 1. I admittedly missed most of season 1, so I came in not really having much equity in the 3 of those guys, but I liked their overall display. I liked kind of how Chavo was the pissed off boss of the 2 of them, so to speak. I think that added to a lot of the match, where you're having Ivelisse and her band kind of going up against a family that they're having issues internally between the way it's portrayed. So it worked out really well for me.
Yeah, and you basically hit the nail on the head. Before, in season 1, Cortez and Cisco were teamed up with another guy named Bayo. He's been killed so far in season 1. And their main guy, can you remember Ezekiel Jackson?
Yes, Zeke.
Yes, he was their muscle. His name was Big Rick. He wore an eye patch because they put a cigar off in his eye.
Oh,
it's great
stuff.
All right. So I really like, though, there's one spot in this match that I really thought was great. And that's when all 3 are set up on the apron. And so Ivelisse goes for a crossbody, and Helico's doing a running a somersault plancha, and Matt Cross, or Son of Havoc, does a springboard moonsault. And all 3 of them's in unison onto the 3 outside. So I thought that was a great little spot.
Yeah, and I think they do a lot of that good stuff where it's a lot of synchronization. I think that's really impressive with how that comes across to your casual viewer.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a big thing with Lucha too, right? It's it's like a dance more than a wrestling match.
Definitely, and I've noticed that by, I have some experience with sometimes flipping around on the TV and catching, the Lucha that is on, in Spanish dialogue, and I don't really know what I'm watching, but I know that it's a lot of a dance. Like they're definitely using each other to make the construct of the match look well. So it's a little more obvious, but it is very interesting though.
Yeah, I agree. So we get a slingshot by Angelico into a springboard knee to Cortez to a double foot stomp for the victory. And post-match, Chavo and the crew are arguing about how to properly cheat, I'm guessing, and Texano comes out and clears the ring. Are you familiar with Texano at all?
I watched, if I'm not mistaken, there was a promo or clip about introducing me to Texano last week, if I'm not mistaken, which that is one thing that I think Lucha does very well, is they do a very good job introducing characters, whether it be Joey Ryan last week or PJ Black or Darewolf or what have you 2 weeks ago. Like, I was introduced to who Texano was, and I think they did a really good job of it. I still want to see more of how that develops down the road, but I was very interested in the Texano character before he showed up. So I knew that he had an issue with Chavo and his crew. So just to see that kind of come to a head was really interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't seen a huge amount of Texano. I was enlightened through Twitter. Somebody on Twitter telling me that he's the longest reigning AAA mega champion of all time, or maybe it's the longest reigning. I know he's the youngest, and he was beaten by Alberto Del Rio to win that title. Or that's how he lost the title, was Alberto Del Rio. So there is, in Mexico, apparently he's a huge deal.
Okay.
I don't know much about him at all.
Yeah, and I don't know much about, CMML or AAA or what have you. But, if he's doing well over there and they're deciding to bring him up, I think that they're bringing him up there for a reason. So it should be interesting to see kind of where they go from there.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we come back from break, and Johnny Mundo makes me feel like a super fat slob. He says he hasn't been treated like the superstar he is, and he should be the champ, but a dummy named Cage stands in his way. This is my world, and everybody else is living in it, is how he ends it. We get a lot of karate segments, though, in Lucha Underground. Have you noticed that?
It's kind of like a hybrid, weird, like, hey, this is what I do to have 8-pack abs, and you can do this. You can do, like, the windshield wipers, and I don't know if he's, like, at the guy at the gym letting everyone know that he's working out and he's in better shape, like, walking around kind of half-heartedly, showing his abs off to everyone, but he definitely comes across as arrogant and unlikable, which I don't know if he's intentionally trying to do that, but I'm watching that thing and I'm like, well, I've tried doing those and my abs don't look a thing like yours, man. Like, and then there's that overall jealousy of the guy who has something you don't have, and he has no problem letting you know he doesn't have it. So
yeah, and
you yourself don't have it.
That's a great heel, just rubbing it in your face that I look better than you. And then you got on the other side of this feud is Cage, who is just a monster of mass. And so, like, you can look at him and feel the exact same way, but you don't. And it's a weird aspect. I like it, but it's odd how one heel is talking about how he's so great looking, and the other face is great looking, but doesn't say anything about it. So you've got, the hometown, or I don't know, like a next boy next door, I guess. Cage, in what fucking town would Cage be the boy next door? What am I talking about?
Probably a town where there's a lot of gyms and a lot of protein and not a lot of fast food, I would think.
I guess so.
But yeah, Cage. There is definitely kind of a relatable factor to Cage as opposed to Johnny Mundo, which I think, if you take Cage's. Cage is a big guy, like, and a lot of people will see that and say, well, I can't do that, I can't be that, but Cage just kind of comes across as someone who, has been working hard for what he has and has more of an appreciation for it. Whereas, I watched Johnny Mundo, and I think, for those who don't know, Johnny Mundo was John Morrison in WWE, and
yes.
I always thought that was where John Morrison, Johnny Mundo was at his best. Like, he is in a long list of people that I think WWE either mismanaged or didn't know what they had, but I'm glad to see him. I'm glad to see him finding that shine in Lucha, and I think he is that natural heel. He is that natural, he's that LA guy that you see at the restaurant who is wearing like $80 shirts and, glasses indoors, and you can't figure out why this guy's wearing sunglasses indoors.
A little side note, I got a pair of Johnny Mundo's glasses in my Wrestle Crate this month.
Yeah. But I think he does a very good job with, making people dislike him, and I think that was where he was at his natural best in WWE, and I think that's something he's been able to transition very well to Lucha.
Oh, I completely agree. So we go backstage, and we have Castro Cortez and Joey Ryan. Joey calls him Ricky Reyes. I like how his cop name is actually his real wrestling name.
Yes.
Cortez tells him to not call him that here, and Joey then says he's a better cop than Cortez, and he'll go out tonight and show it in his first match against all else but Cage.
Yeah, I've seen Joey wrestle in the independents in the Bay Area. The thing with the lollipop and shoving it in a certain area, like I'm 31. I kind of find that to be weird, but
it's a little odd. I must say, his character is definitely geared more towards a more of a teenage, early 20s audience, where it's more of a shock and awe type deal. especially with that unicorn plex. Right? Like,
yes.
I respect Joey Ryan for what he does. I wouldn't go out and say Joey Ryan's an amazing wrestler. I would say that this match was entertaining.
I would say, my back history with Joey Ryan is, I know he does a lot of California independents. I know he's up in the Bay Area a lot. I don't know if I would pay to see Joey Ryan wrestle, but if he's on a card, I don't think that I'm not going to be entertained. Again, being, almost 32, thing with the blow pop, and, I get that, independent wrestlers have to stand out, or guys that, travel, they have to find something that works for them. Joey Ryan was, he did find a pretty substantial amount of fame with doing the thing in Japan where he tilted a guy with his with his tilt. I guess you could say, he tilted a guy with his tilt. I guess would be a good way to put it. I mean, it put more eyes in the national stage on the Joey Ryan, which I think is only going to help Joey Ryan. So that's always cool. Seeing him in Lucha was pretty cool. I definitely enjoyed it. I know he is doing the lollipop thing, which, I'm not putting money in his pocket, and I hope he continues to get money in his pocket, so I can't really knock him for it. But, I thought him coming into Lucha is going to be definitely interesting, especially with his segments with backstage with being the cop. I think that's going to lead to something pretty cool down the road.
Yeah, that's where you got a huge plus with Joey Ryan, in my opinion, is those backstage vignettes and how he can really shine through those, because in my opinion, he just looks like a super trooper.
Yes.
So being a cop is just perfect for him, in my opinion. And then you add that lollipop, it just gives him that like fuck you feel. So
yeah, it's definitely kind of an arrogant, like I'm not even paying attention to you because I have a lollipop in my mouth. And again, hit the nail on the head with the super trooper aspect. Like I look at that guy and I'm thinking, all right, cool. Well, I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but I have a feeling I'm going to be entertained. And that's important.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, basically, you get Cage hitting a discus lariat. Joey ducks, hits a super kick. Cage no-sells, charges towards him. Joey kicks the legs out from under him, hits a nice quick kick to the face. But Joey goes for one too many super kicks. Cage catches his leg, lifts him up for a power breaker, crushing Joey's lower back on his knee, then lifts him up for a delayed suplex into a sit-down pile driver for the win. Do you have much experience with Cage? Have you ever seen him in his early PWG days?
I have not. PWG is kind of like my dirty secret, where I hear a lot of good things about it. I've heard it's really impressive. I wish I had the time to sit down and go through it and be caught up. Like I know they do a lot of stuff in Reseda, and it's kind of like one of the more popular independent promotions that's out there. And I wish I had more time to get caught up on it, but to be honest, I can't get caught up on everything. Like there's so much that's out there now that I haven't got into PWG. I've heard good things about it, but what Cage has been doing the past couple weeks has kept me entertained though.
Yeah, he was where I was going with this. Cage was really tiny in PWG. Mm-hmm. Like like the body mass that he has now he had maybe 10% of that in PWG. Which makes me think that there's a little substance involved with him, but
it's not just hard work and protein in the gym.
Yeah, I don't think it's just hard work and protein in the gym. But I mean, whatever. I'm not. Yeah. However you go along in life, I don't care as long as I'm entertained. Whatever. Yeah. So post match, Johnny Mundo attacks Cage, says "Welcome to the Slam Town, bitch," but Cage gets his revenge. The Weapon X on Mundo, and he's out. Cage stands tall. Now, I have a little problem with this, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but they announced a match between Cage and Mundo next week, so that essentially Cage can get his revenge on Johnny Mundo, but he already got it tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's been kind of frustrating as of late, to where a lot of things that they've been doing don't, and not just in Lucha, but in other companies, where a lot of stuff isn't told very fluidly week over week.
Yeah.
Like the guy's got retribution, that he's going again next week to get retribution, so why should I be as invested in him getting that retribution next week?
Yeah, like, because if you look at, if I look at it, I feel like the heel should get the upper hand on the babyface until the match comes. And where,
Definitely.
you got Cage, who even hits his finisher on Johnny Mundo and walks away. You know, I mean, it's just weird if you ask me.
Yeah, because then if you look at it from a casual fan standpoint, well, like the guy got his revenge last week. Like he hit him with his quote unquote finisher, and the best move that he has, he hit him with. So why am I going to pay to watch this again?
Exactly. At least it's just a TV show, and you don't have to pay for it. So
very true, very true.
We cut back to Rey Mysterio and Dragon Azteca Jr. doing some karate sparring in their time off. Rey says Aztec has revenge in his heart, and it's time for some backstory. So this is where shit gets really, really confusing, in my opinion. 25 years ago, Dario Cueto's father came to Mexico and met Dragon Azteca. Are you familiar with Dario Cueto?
Aside from him being in the Super Bowl ad, no, I'm not.
What was he? He was like a doctor or something, or?
Yeah, he was in some kind of commercial that I saw for a brief moment, and then I just saw that it exploded. That this guy from Lucha is in the Super Bowl commercial. So I am not terribly familiar with Dario. No.
So basically, Dario Cueto he ran the temple last season, and throughout the whole season, he had this chain on his neck with a key. And that key was the same key he used to open up the door in season 1, or episode 1 of season 2, to lead the 3 guys into Matanza's lair, I guess. But basically, Dario Cueto's father came to Mexico and met Dragon Azteca. They decided that they should gather the descendants of 7 ancient tribes and do battle again, this time, though, for honor instead of blood. But Senior Cueto made a sacrifice to the old gods, letting a god inhabit his son's body, Matanza. They then made a truce that neither would step foot in either's territory again, or they would die. That's why Azteca got killed last year when he entered the temple. Dragon Azteca Jr. asks what he's looking for. Rey responds with a way to unite all 7 tribes to fight Matanza. So basically, you're given the idea that Matanza is going to be the great heel this year, and they're going to have to fight him, and that he's an undead god. So it might be hard.
I mean, it definitely sets up for something interesting. I like them bringing in Rey. Yeah, I like them bringing in Rey. I like the fact that they're bringing him in slowly, too.
Yes, like you haven't seen much.
Yeah, you haven't seen him wrestle, which I think is always good. I think it is good to bring in guys slowly, give the fans an emotional equity, and then have that payoff when the match comes. But, trying to do more to where they explain why the guys are here, so that way as a fan you'll have more equity in what they're doing, as opposed to just walking them down to the ring the first night, with a guy of Rey's caliber, giving us something to be interested in.
Especially with, everybody has seen Rey wrestle so many times. What have you not seen Rey do? This.
Exactly.
These backstage segments, something that hasn't been done to death with Rey Mysterio, and it's nice to see that instead of the matches again. It'll make his matches mean more and more and more as the season goes on.
I think it does give him depth. I think, in his previous, incarnations, there wasn't a lot of depth to him in WCW. There was always kind of that underground, underdog type feel for him when he was in WWE, which I don't agree with, but that's
for another show, another small guy.
Yeah, if you're under 6 foot, no matter what, you're an underdog, and you're always billed as you can't get out from that glass ceiling. So I think this is probably some of the most depth I've seen in Rey that isn't based around him being a little guy and trying to fight an uphill battle. So I find it to be really interesting. I think, I said it earlier that one thing that Lucha does really well is it gets me to want to watch it week after week after week.
Yeah, no, and that's, using these little hints and for what's to come will definitely keep you coming back for more, in my opinion.
Definitely, and I think, with something where in North America, there's not a lot of intrigue as far as a lot of wrestling that's on TV, so to speak. WWE has had their issues. TNA, I can't even find it on my television. So to have that good alternative with Lucha, that is putting out a program that's different visually and different production wise. I'm more interested next week in Lucha than I am with anything else that's going to be on TV next week.
I agree. I know that I put Lucha above NXT in my opinion because, NXT is a developmental territory in at heart. So it's like you're going to get, a lot of weeks of NXT where it's just meh. You've got, the Drifter or Alex Riley, stuff like that there. So like NXT I think is great. Their takeover specials are amazing. The week-to-week TV show, though, can get quite boring, in my opinion, where Lucha Underground doesn't, ever, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I think one thing that NXT has Lucha has that NXT to me doesn't have is, and it might be because it's new, and it might be because I don't have as much, backstory in what I'm watching, but to me, every match seems like it matters towards something.
Yeah.
I agree. Even the match earlier has the backstory. The beginning match, the 6-person match, has the backstory of, the issue with Mil Muertes. The one after that, you have your issue with Joey Ryan, and then you have the issue with Cage and Johnny Mundo. So it seems like each match is going towards next week, which I think is something that's been missing lately.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when you put it like that, it's a no-brainer on why WWE or TNA really fail to capitalize on fans being invested in the product.
Yeah, it's definitely been frustrating because to me when I watch, it got to the point so bad where me living in California, I hear about the East Coast, and what they're saying about Raw before it comes on because they get it before us with the time difference, but
okay.
There's no way in February 2016 in WrestleMania season that I am stopping what I'm doing to watch Big Show Braun Strowman.
No, not a
main event Raw
chance. No, not a chance.
Yeah, especially with them going home to Fastlane, and this is 4 to 6 weeks going into WrestleMania 31. Like, I'm not going to be invested in that.
No.
But I am invested to see what happens next week with Johnny Mundo and Cage. And I think that's the biggest thing with any television shows. Do you want to watch next week?
Exactly. And again, you hit the nail right on the head with that one. So let's go. We get Prince Puma versus Pentagon Jr. in the main event. You're what's the word? I guess privy? I don't know to who Prince Puma actually is, right? You know who he's
okay.
Yeah,
I've seen him do Ricochet before, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So Stryker says that Puma is a descendant of the ancient Aztecs. This is basically a hint with the Rey Mysterio bit, how they said they have to get the 7 tribes together and unite them to fight Matanza. Well, I'm guessing Puma is going to be one of the leaders of one of the tribes that they'll get together.
Yeah, I could see that. And that's the good thing, too, is that even just those little subtle commentaries seems to matter.
Yeah, exactly. For me, though, Pentagon Jr. is my favorite guy in Lucha Underground. I think the guy is absolutely amazing. Do you have any favorites in Lucha Underground that you like every week, if this guy's on there, I've got to see it?
From what I've seen, a lot of Pentagon, a lot of King Cuerno I was very intrigued in,
yes.
And a lot of Prince Puma stuff, just because it's the same way with the cruiserweights back in when WCW was what it was. Like, these guys are going to do stuff that I haven't seen before, and it's going to work in the flow of the match.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've seen a good amount of Prince Puma, do Ricochet in New Japan and stuff like that. And admittingly, I'm not in tuned or plugged in with PWG or Evolve, so I've missed a lot of what Ricochet has done. But I know when Ricochet comes on, I find him to be extremely captivating. Like, it's just watching him on TV, you really never know what he's going to do, and anything that guy can do is impressive.
Oh yeah, that little bit where he goes to run and do a dive onto Pentagon. He does a springboard into the ropes, flips back, and comes down with like a power stance on the crest of the ring.
Yes,
it's like, holy fucking shit! How do you do that every time? You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy how this guy here, whatever move he does, it just looks crisp and clean, and they're always the hardest moves to do if by looks, like the springboard 450. How do you springboard off of a rope and do 450 in Revolution and do that every time flawlessly? I just don't get it.
Yeah, and he does a good job with making the moves matter too. Like, he's not just doing, I think that's kind of where that style of wrestling went for a little while, but he, to me, does an excellent job of making the moves matter, making them work in the construct of the match, which I think is extremely, extremely important.
Oh, without a doubt.
And, yeah, there's not a lot that he doesn't do. I'm like, I see why he did that, and it makes a lot of sense in the flow of the match. So that, to me, is important as well.
Yeah, like a great example of what you're talking about is that redirection cutter that Stryker said, where Pentagon goes to run towards the ropes, Puma runs towards the ropes with him, and then cuts him off as Pentagon's like, what the fuck is he doing? And he hits a cutter on him. So it's like, I thought that, just the psychology of those moves by Puma are very good. Yes. I also really enjoy when Pentagon goes for his slaps, and he says, he puts his finger up to his mouth, and the whole crowd says, shh, and they're quiet for the slap. I think that's just great command of a crowd, and it's just, the charisma in Pentagon just to be able to get the crowd to be silent in a match just for that spot is beyond me. It's great.
Yeah, and I've liked a lot of what I've seen with Pentagon, in the weeks leading up to it too. Like I find him to be very intriguing in watching what he's doing. Is he finds a way to keep the crowd involved, and everything that he does, in the flow of the match with Puma as well is. They're not just throwaway moves. Like, again, like you said with the chops, like the chops matter. And a lot of time I think that wrestlers have gotten to a spot where they just want to do the chops to get the reaction from the crowd.
Yeah.
To get that woo sound. And, like, I think it's one of the things now with wrestling fans where if you do a chop, like, fans are just going to go woo in response to seeing a chop. But,
it's like a super
his chops, like a super kick, like a DDT or what have you. Like, they're moves that are just thrown in there. Because it's like, here's how you get reaction from a crowd.
Yeah.
You do a chop, you do this, you do that. But, with a lot of what I see with Pentagon, like, they're not necessarily designed to get a reaction from the crowd. They're designed to tell a story.
Yes, exactly. So Puma, he hits a Northern Lights bridging suplex. He floats over and then hits a deadlift vertical suplex. Basically displaying the strength that Puma has, just because it's not like Pentagon is a lean guy, he's a chubby guy, so he's heavy, so to deadlift that guy and be smaller than him just looks amazing to me.
Yeah, and that's one thing for for Puma being able to fly the way that he can fly and do those kind of moves. He is an incredibly strong worker. Like I'm watching Puma and I've watched him do, stuff in Japan, and I just keep thinking, like, this is like, if you relate it to sports, like, this is like watching a really good college player.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking, like, one day he's going to make it to the pros and he's going to set North America on fire. And then I kind of go back and forth with, like, I don't know, do I want this little college football player just to stay in college for as long as possible selfishly, so I can enjoy him having matches like this in Lucha Underground. I want to watch more of these style of matches that he's doing because I want to get into finding out more of what he's doing, find out more of what the Prince Puma character is, as opposed to kind of hoping that he makes it big right away. Like, I want to enjoy this ride of Prince Puma.
I agree. It's one of those things where you feel that if he ever got signed by, the WWE, it would not be the Ricochet or Puma that we know.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's the feeling that I always get. Just like, with Nakamura going to the WWE or any of these guys, there's always that lingering feeling that, will they be the same wrestler that I knew beforehand? And will they still have all the reasons that I like them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one thing that it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, you have these guys that you're fans of that, even if you look at it in music, from any standpoint in music, like, you have, like, these underground artists in any genre of music that you like, and then you enjoy watching them perform in the smaller venues, and you're like, I hope, the whole world gets to see what I like. And then it's like, well, what if the whole world gets to see what I like and they don't see what I like? They see,
yes.
And I'm a massive Nakamura fan. And I've gotten more into New Japan to kind of buzz off what you were saying. Like, I've gotten really into New Japan lately, and I've watched a lot of Nakamura matches. And like, when he got signed, when him, AJ, and the Bullet Club got signed, I was mixed on it. Like, I was really excited because I'm like, Nakamura's going to come to WWE. AJ's going to come. Like, this is going to be great. And then I had to take a step back, and I'm like, I hope they don't just give him 5-minute matches. Like, it would pain me to see Nakamura do, like, a 5-minute match with Braun Strowman and just not have it matter. Like, that's my fear. And,
yeah,
like,
I know.
And even with NXT, like, you're watching NXT and, you're before the Divas Revolution happened and before, Kevin Owens was tearing up NXT and Neville and what have you, like, this is something that I've been talking about for a while on different shows and with different people that I know is I don't know if I have faith in WWE. Like, if you take out Kevin Owens from the equation and you peel it back a few months before, Sasha kind of got the spot that she has, and same with Charlotte. Is anyone from NXT really came up and equated or gone past what they did in WWE? Like Neville's,
not really.
Yeah, and Neville's floundered.
The only one you've got really is Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns only had a cup of tea in NXT.
Yeah, and I think to me, like I don't look at Rollins and Ambrose and Reigns as really NXT guys, because NXT to me, I think, started with the advent of the network. To me, because I really wasn't into the Florida. Yeah, I wasn't into the Florida Championship and the debut of NXT with Rollins and Mahal. Like I had to go back and find that. So with NXT being as big as it is now, like I don't know if when these guys or girls come up, like I know Enzo and Carmella and Cass are supposed to be debuting soon, depending on who you read.
Yeah, I've heard so far as tonight, dating ourselves for Fastlane. I've heard during the Rated R Peep show. That's what I've heard. Okay. I don't know.
And I've heard it's that. I've heard it's Monday. I've heard Joe's coming after Mania.
I heard that as well.
And I just keep thinking, like, I don't know if I want these guys to go. Like, I want them to have that exposure, but I want them to matter on the national stage. And that's one of my fears with Puma and these guys and girls that are NXT, where they come up and the casual fan who doesn't watch NXT is looking at Neville like he's a 5-minute job guy. And I'm thinking, like, this guy can put on great matches, and it's frustrating more than anything.
Well, this is what I try to tell people is look at NXT and look at the main event they had at one of their takeovers. Neville versus Bo Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And that match, I loved it. I think it was a ladder match, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. It was a ladder match for the title. I think that was Bo's last match, I believe.
I think so. It's when Neville won the title off him, I believe. And you look at both of them now on the roster, and it's just like, what the hell did they do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's madness. NXT, you've got, in NXT, all these guys prosper. Like, I'm so not looking forward to Bayley going to the main roster. Because I don't think Vince has a clue of how to make Bayley a viable option in the WWE.
And it's such a different thing. Like, that's the thing that I think is so interesting, where, Wednesdays we're watching these guys and girls wrestle in NXT. Like, I think Bayley's the female John Cena as far as the way she connects with the fans.
Exactly.
And, a little bit of a backstory with Bayley, living in Northern California, she kind of got her start and was working in an independent promotion, big time wrestling out here. I remember when I went to a wrestling convention out here. It's a small town called Newark, and I met Bret Hart and I met a bunch of other people. And in the corner, you see this independent wrestler named Davina Rose, who ended up becoming Bayley.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting for me. Like, I watch Bayley and I'm like, this is the girl from San Jose that I watched for years. And just to see her have that shine, like, I'm bought into Bayley from what I know before NXT, and then now with NXT seeing the great matches she's having. But just like you, like, I'm thinking, like, God, when her or Nia Jax come up, like,
they're just going to get shit on, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like they're going to end up having 5-minute, 6-person matches that
against Brie
don't
Bella.
allow them. Yeah, against Brie Bella, and she's yelling Brie mode when she's supposed to be heel, and still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But,
nobody has ever given thought to Brie's character, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's just, she's part of the Twins, and she's not with John Cena, so just stick her with Nikki Bella and have her, it's clear as day she's putting Charlotte over tonight, or, and we're
I
dating
would
ourselves.
hope so, at least. Jesus, if she wins that title, I don't know what I'll do, honestly. I'll feel
I do think that she's kind of like the Big Show in a way, as far as with women's wrestling right now, because she is still a name that, if Charlotte beats Brie Bella, it'll still matter.
Yes,
and I think that, your Big Shows and your Brie Bellas are getting these guys and girls ready for the main stage. Like, I remember Show and Reigns had their thing, which was kind of getting Reigns ready, and now you see Show and Strowman doing their thing, so it's obvious they're trying to see Strowman get ready.
Yes.
Same thing with Charlotte. I think they're building these wins for Charlotte and, who have you, to go to Mania, and I do hope we get Charlotte Sasha at Mania, to have Sasha get the belt, but we'll see how that goes.
I would like to see that as well. I wouldn't be opposed to a 3-way with Becky in the mix either. But to me, it has to have Sasha and Charlotte. It has to.
Yeah. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah. Let's finish up this Puma and Pentagon match, I guess.
Definitely.
Pentagon hits the prettiest package pile driver and then stretches Puma out with a surfboard. Both shoulders of Pentagon and Puma are on the mat, so the ref starts pinning. 1, 2, Puma lifts his shoulders up. 3, Puma wins. Pentagon is furious, so he super kicks the ref, wants more of Puma. Puma hits a kick to the head, and then goes for the same move that was used to break Mil Muertes' arm, but stops. No revenge for Puma. That's going right back to the Dragon Azteca story, and saying, like how you can't have revenge in your heart to unite the 7 tribes. So if Puma is a part of the 7 tribes, he doesn't have revenge. So he's not doing revenge. So it's a good storyline.
Yeah, and I think, one thing, too, that I've touched on earlier that I think Lucha does a very good job with, the little things seem to matter. And like you said, with Puma not breaking Pentagon's arm, I think once they have that spot to where, the 7 tribes come together and they're going after, they're not so much revenge, but they're going for their place. Yeah. That spot with Puma not breaking the arm is going to matter a lot more than it does right now.
Exactly. So you plant little things as you go along, just to go back. Oh my god, I'm gonna burp. To go back to and just look at and reflect upon and say, that's what this was for, and that's what this was for. It's that stuff is always great in movies, so it's got to be great in wrestling as well. It just equates to making good stories.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think movies do a good job with, and I think Lucha's done a good job with, to where you see one thing, and as a fan or as a viewer, you're like, I think that's going to matter, and then you start putting the story together in your head of, when Prince Puma didn't break the arm, and kind of like what we just did, Prince Puma didn't break the arm, so this is going to mean this, and it could entirely mean something else, but I think more than anything, you're emotionally invested in each one of these matches and each one of these moves, which I think is what wrestling sorely needs right now.
Exactly. Actually, one thing I want to touch back on NXT for a second here. What's the chances that both shows this week that run Wednesdays ended in the same way?
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, with Joe and Zayn. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I know where they're going with the Joe and the Zayn thing with leading to Joe and Baylor in Dallas, but I thought that was very interesting. And then I do if you add another layer to that, you have those things. You have those two, similar finishes but telling great stories, and then on the main roster you've got Big Show and Braun Strowman.
Oh, the Titans versus the Gods.
Yes, exactly.
Ryback. Was it Ryback, yeah. Big Show, and Kane against the Wyatts minus Bray Wyatt? So it's Luke Harper against 3 guys. Yeah,
it's just and I think that they are giving fans more options with NXT and Lucha, so I think that's very interesting. But I did find the comical irony in the fact that both of those matches ended the same.
Oh yeah, me too. I say it many times. If it wasn't for this podcast, I would not be watching Raw. Not a chance.
Yeah, I would say so. I would. I didn't watch it last week. I just read about it, and I'm like, wow, there's really nothing on here that I want to watch.
And last week was better than the last 3 weeks. You know what I mean? It was easier to sit through last week, and that still was a shitty episode.
Yeah, and I don't understand, and I've made this analogy before. I don't understand how WWE is supposed to have the best writing staff in the country, and this is the best they come out with.
You got ROH. Jimmy Jacobs used to write for ROH, and it seemed pretty good. I don't know exactly what he wrote in ROH, but the storylines in ROH, when there were storylines, were pretty good. If Jimmy Jacobs were writing those, what the hell is he writing in the WWE?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the one more than anything is that everything's got to go through Vince. Yes. And you can have these guys that have great storylines. Like Jimmy Jacobs could be pulling a storyline that they can get the fans in, and Vince looks at it like, no, Braun Strowman, Big Show. That's where we're going. It's you guys, it's not working, right? You know that.
No, it's not.
No, Braun Strowman, Big Show. That's what fans want to see.
I am a big believer that if Vince McMahon really wanted to, he would put Braun Strowman in the main event against Reigns, just to say "fuck you" to us.
Yes,
you're still going to buy my pay-per-view.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is is working for Vince's favor is that there's nothing, like, I don't want to say there's nothing else because we've spent this whole show talking about Lucha, and there obviously is other options, whether it be Lucha, whether it be NXT, whether it be, you know, PWG, whether it be New Japan, but the prettiest girl in the dance doesn't have any competition. So
it's like, yes, exactly. The prettiest girl in the dance, she has no competition. Everybody else is ugly, but she has no character whatsoever.
Yes.
You look at her and it's just woo Valley girl.
Yes. And if, you know, in sports are obviously as big as they are in Northern California, I have drawn the comparison many times to where, you know, and I'm not a Raider fan, but I know there are a lot of Oakland Raider fans out here, and towards the end of Al Davis's tenure as an owner, even the tenure of his life, there was kind of this lingering thing like, okay, we just have to wait this out until Al Davis retires or Al Davis passes away, until, you know, his son comes in and takes over the team. And by no means, I mean, I don't want Vince to pass away. Like, he's been everything to professional wrestling, but I think there is kind of a quiet narrative coming around where it's like, okay, we just have to suffer through Braun Strowman and Big Show because eventually Triple H is going to be able to take over the whole company, and we're going to get these great things. Like, Triple H is like the cool assistant manager that everyone wants to work for until the boss comes in and it's like, oh, well, you know, why can't we take a longer break? Oh, well, the boss is here. We can't do that.
Exactly. And to think about it, 15 years ago, if you were to tell me that Triple H would be, you know, the good guy in all of this, I would have said no. Because, like, you look at the stories that ran around about Triple H in the early 2000s were abysmal. He sounded like the biggest dick in the world. But then you come here, when it's business-wise, he's taking care of NXT and he's making NXT. You know, I would say NXT is almost the number 2 brand in North America.
Yeah, and I've posed this question because I've posed this question on my podcast, and I'll pose it to you really quick. If I told you, you know, you can go to either one, you can either go to WrestleMania 32 or you can go to I'm trying to blank, the NXT show in Dallas. Like, if I just gave you unlimited resource and said you can go to either one, like, which one would you prefer to go to as of right now? Cards looking the way that they do.
Oh, and the NXT show, guaranteed. It's that head over heels. You know, it's. I kick myself every day for not going to the NXT show in California last year. So it's one of those things where, you know, you live and you learn, right? But I know what WrestleMania is now. I know what it's like live. It's a great spectacle to be a part of. I would imagine it loses a lot of luster the second time around. But the NXT and the crowd and the atmosphere and just the matchups, and especially adding Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Balor versus Joe, those two, Asuka versus Bayley.
That's the one I want to see.
Yes. You know, you've got American Alpha against Dash and Dawson. It's just going to be so many great matches. I wish I could go, you know. So.
Yeah, it's just so odd to me because there's such a contrast in the way they're booked. Because from the minute Asuka debuted, I'm like, her and Bayley. Like, I want her and Bayley. Somebody give me her and Bayley. And I think if you had that in WWE, you'd have it like the next week. You know, if you had that in the main roster, excuse me.
Exactly.
Like you'd have Asuka against the Divas Championship the next week. And then with Bayley, Asuka, they've been able to build up these wrestlers to where they matter both to the fans, and it's kind of like, well, eventually these two teams are going to get to each other.
Yeah.
And now we get to see it on the biggest stage. These two, you know, wrestlers are in sports. These two teams, like, you know, these two are going to play each other, and now we get it on the biggest stage, and it's going to be really exciting.
Exactly, and they have made, you know, well, Bayley is Bayley. You know, crowd loves her. She's a good wrestler. You've got Asuka, who, you know, she can't speak English very well at all, but they've booked her in a way where she's just mowing over competition. Nobody has even come close to beating her.
Mm-hmm.
She's been there for almost a year. You know,
and I remember watching, like, the first Asuka match, and, like, that was the first thing I texted one of my friends after I watched the first Asuka match. I was like, I want Asuka Bayley. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get it. But that's, like, I watched that and I'm like, these are the two they're going to have to wrestle eventually.
Oh, yeah.
But I think one thing that, you know, Bayley's done a very good job at on the road to getting to Asuka, and I think, again, this is something where the main roster has been missing, and I think, the other shows have been doing a good job on it, whether it be Lucha, is that all of Bayley's matches have been able to elevate. She elevated Nia Jax with the TakeOver show in London. I think that she didn't necessarily make Nia Jax, but she made Nia Jax relevant.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And then you look at the other shows like your Lucha or what have you, like, to me, everything that they're doing match by match or person by person is making the other person seem more relevant. Like, Joey Ryan still came out of that loss, even though he lost to Cage. Joey Ryan still came out of that, and I'm thinking, like, okay, I want to watch Joey Ryan again.
Well, yeah, and
I didn't look at Joey Ryan as a loser.
No, exactly, and it helps too when the commentators are selling Joey Ryan on you, when they're saying, nobody has given Cage this run for his money before. We're seeing it from this new guy named Joey Ryan. So it's great storytelling in general. You take Bayley and Asuka; they're both faces. And then it's going to be a good match, anyways. And you go with you take the match that she had against Carmella. If you would have told me 3 weeks ago that watching a Carmella match, I would think it would be, and I would be very entertained, I would have said no.
Yeah, definitely.
But you put Bayley with her; she even made Carmella look like $1 million. So, Jesus. Right?
Yeah, and Carmella, Carmella's her perception on TV has kind of been the hype person for Enzo and Cass, and then you get that thing where it's like, oh wow, she's actually coming across like a really good wrestler. I didn't know they had that in there, and a lot of that can be tied to the way that Bayley's helping her through the match, and Bayley's getting her through the match, and not only that, the way that Graves and these commentators are putting her over as if she's always had this in her. This is, kind of the culmination of Baymella and all that. So I think they do a very good job making the little small parts of the process of each match matter, in not only in Lucha but in NXT as well.
I agree. So basically, let's touch on the last aspect of Lucha Underground this week. We cut to a segment of Sexy Star running down a dark and dingy hallway. She runs into the Mac, who is easily the worst actor on the show. B-movie at best. Mac asks here, asks her where she's been. She states that she's been kidnapped by the Moth. Mac is going to kill him until she says, no, not him. She points and says her. She points off screen, and that is, I don't know if you're aware, I believe it's supposed to be cheerleader Melissa. Have you ever heard of her?
By name, yeah. I saw her once at a cauliflower arrow club, yeah.
Same thing with me. I know of the name cheerleader Melissa. I haven't seen a lot of her, but I hear that she is an amazing wrestler.
Okay.
So, that's as far as I can go on that.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it goes back to my general thoughts on Lucha is that I want to watch and see where that story goes.
Exactly.
And they do have that production of the story on TV to where I don't know the backstory behind that. It's kind of easy to understand as they go through the construct of that segment backstage, but just to be able to see that, I'm like, I want to see who she's looking at. I want to see why Willie Mack was there. I want to see, what Sexy Star is trying to escape from, stuff like that.
Yeah. So let me give you a rundown, okay, of the Moth. Do you know anything about the Moth?
I do not.
Okay, great, because I wanted to tell the story. So, it's a guy named Marty the Moth, okay? He debuted in Lucha Underground. He used to believe he was a moth. Now, so I couldn't get behind him. I thought it was garbage. What's a grown-ass, overweight guy in tights doing thinking he's a moth, flapping his wings and shit? I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Turns out, throughout the season, he's slowly going crazier, and crazier until he kidnaps Sexy Star at the end of season 1 and brings him back to his lair. Him and his sister, I guess, have their way with it. I don't know what the fuck they do, but him and his sister, she escapes, and then they come looking for her at the temple. That's what's going on here. So just the evolution of Marty the Moth from this quirky Santino-type character into this batshit crazy, I guess the only way you can equate it to is like Al Snow crazy. I don't know. Okay. But it's interesting to see where it's going. It's just another layer. It's like an ogre.
I mean, it's just the way you're telling that story. It adds to the intrigue of seeing what happens next week, because that always reminds me of, you watch your horror films and there's always seemingly that that one guy that everyone seems to underlook as the movie goes on, and then as the story goes on, you find out the guy's a lunatic. And I think that's a classic, storytelling in movies. And I think from how it's being described to me now is I want to find more out about this Marty the Moth guy.
Yeah, exactly. And me being a big horror movie buff, those little macabre storylines, like, going crazy, or, this guy's a monster, or, stuff like that really intrigue me. Like, Mil Muertes' character alone intrigues me just because of the darkness aspect of it and the horror aspect of it, you know what I mean?
Yes, definitely, yeah. I would definitely agree.
Okay. So what's your overall thoughts on episode 4 of Lucha Underground?
I was impressed. I liked the 6-person match to open it. I think they did a very good job telling stories that culminated with what happened this week.
Yeah. With
Puma Pentagon. I think that leading into the end of Puma Pentagon, to me, just showed me that there's more to come to the story. Exactly. And I think they did a very good job in this episode with setting the table for the future episodes. So what you're watching, what I watched this week, is going to mean more to me, I think, 2-3 weeks down the road.
I agree. I thought the episode was good too. I really liked the break in the middle with the Joey Ryan cage bit, where it's lucha wrestling, and then there's just an American wrestling match just to break up the I guess the steady flow of lucha, just to give you something a little different. And I really liked that little break. I've heard some people shitting on that match because it's not a lucha match, but it's Lucha Underground has never been just a lucha build. Like, you don't have a guy like Cage in there to do lucha. He's there to be a big monstrous force that these lucha guys can't really get around. And so I like the fact that they break up the monotony in a way.
Well, I think it also helps too, because not only do they break up the monotony, is that the lucha matches seem to matter just a little bit more. And this American style wrestling match seems to matter just a little bit more too, because you don't see either one of those all the time. So when you do see it, you want to stop and watch more of it.
Exactly. And for Joey Ryan being an undercover cop in the temple who's trying to pretend he's a luchador, should he be able to do luchador things? I don't think so. He should be trying to be a luchador, but not really getting the grasp of it.
Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, I think even that match itself, with Joey trying to pose as that undercover cop, trying to do luchador things, I think that match is going to mean more 2 or 3 weeks down the road. I think they're starting to tell the story of Joey Ryan, and I'm more interested to see where the story goes.
Yeah, exactly. So Ryan, how about you tell everybody where they can find everything that you do?
Sure. We're on a couple different platforms. You can check us out at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. You can check us out on iTunes at Gully Blanchard. It's GULLYBLANCHARD. You can also find me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard as well, GULLYBLANCHARD. We are also on NoCoastBias.com. We can check out the show there as well. It's one of the spots that help us out, give us some promotion for the show. So there's 4 different avenues where you can check us out. Generally, what we try to do is we try to do one show a week where we're talking wrestling or talking sports with someone that's kind of similar to what we're doing today.
Yeah,
and then
I've noticed there's a lot of football talk in your shows.
Yes, and then we have the other show to where 3 of my buddies get together and we pretty much just let it rip for an hour. We turn the show on. We have a general idea of where we're going to go. Sometimes it's wrestling based, sometimes it's pro football based, sometimes it's baseball, sometimes it's kind of where we go. So we try to encompass sports and wrestling in that 3-person show as well.
Yeah, and a natural conversation is always the best, in my opinion.
Yes.
There's been so many times where I've sat down with buddies and just talked, and just after it was over, I really, really wish I had a microphone going right now, because this would have been great.
Yeah, and that's, I started my show kind of doing like a one-man thing where I was just talking for 30, 45 minutes, and it wasn't bad, but I was like, there's more that we can do. And, I found myself talking to a couple of my buddies who we were doing, who was helping me, produce and edit the show. And I'm like, dude, why don't we just turn the microphone on and just talk to each other for an hour? Like, it comes across a lot more fun. We have more fun. Sometimes it careens into a ditch, but I think that people... I think more than anything, like, we'll talk before the show, and it's like, why aren't we just recording this stuff right now? Like, exactly. So we go in and just record it for an hour, and it comes across a lot more fun. So I'm passionate about wrestling, and I do understand there's a market of P fans that want to hear more about it. So I try to give them something, whether I'm talking to, someone once a week or once every couple weeks about where their thoughts are with wrestling, or, we try to get on the show. And, I know that a lot of people that listen to the 3-person show don't have the understanding of what goes on is in the wrestling business. So I've got one of my buddies on there who doesn't entirely get it, but we try to present it in more of terms to where everyone can understand what's going on. Like I use the analogy of Triple H being the cool assistant manager at work until Vince comes in and he's the manager that no one likes, and everyone can relate to that.
Yeah, everybody has that boss in their life. Everybody.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that I think wrestling has always done well, where the storylines as a person, you can relate to them when wrestling's at its best.
Yes.
So I think we try to do that on our show.
Austin McMahon is one of those storylines where it's just everybody can relate to, and that's why it was so fucking big.
Yeah, and they've tried to replicate that so many times that they've missed just about every time they've tried to replicate that. So,
and that's the problem too. Is like you don't need to go back to that well again. Find something a little different. You can always tell the same story in a different way.
Yeah, and they did that with Punk Laurinaitis.
Yes.
They did that with Bryan and the Authority. They tried doing that with Reigns and the Authority, and I wish they would find new ways to make your babyface stars.
Yeah, I think a good change would be a babyface Authority. Just for a small change. Just give it a babyface, have it run, the way a lot of these shows run with a babyface Authority, and just let the characters get over themselves. Because I find myself, Steph really does she's great at what she does, but she makes the guys look like fucking just idiots. She belittles them. They never get their win back on her. She's always above them. And that just makes your talent just look like geeks.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that I like the Authority does have that role because, there is a time and a place for a boss that no one likes. But at the same time, like, if I'm the champ of the show, like if I'm, Roman Reigns is the top guy in the company, why am I not in control of the whole show? That would be my first thought. Like, I have the biggest prize in the company. Why am I not running the show? Why am I not having, putting the heels in danger by me just on the simple strength that I'm the champ of the company?
Yeah. Like there was a year, maybe 2 years ago. It was the last time Vince came back, and they were kind of hinting at dissension between Triple H, Vince, and Stephanie. And then that just disappeared. I was so into that and wondering where that was going to go just because it was different. Vince was out there and he was disagreeing with Triple H. They were both disagreeing with Stephanie. I really wish that carried on a little bit more, but they dropped it as quick as they started it.
I think that's been the general theme with WWE as of late, too. Like, I don't buy into the theory that the talent pool is thin. I just think that they've done such a bad job lately with booking talent to look consistent that, you lose some guys and people are looking at your Stardust, who I think Stardust is a main event player. Maybe not the character, but I think Cody Rhodes is a wrestler.
Cody Rhodes is, yes, I agree.
Yeah, but then how many times have we started and stopped on Cody Rhodes? Yeah. Same with Ziggler, same with Cesaro, same with all these guys that I think that's been something that's been hurting WWE for so long, is that it's the start-stop booking where now the roster looks thin because that's been the way it's been portrayed for years.
Yeah, it's completely true. Completely true. Before we go, Ryan, though, I need you to tell me what your favorite burrito is, because everybody on this show has to tell me what their favorite burrito is. And where you're from California, you should have a favorite burrito. I'm from Alberta, I do.
Yeah, I do, and favorite burrito, gun to head. I would say there is a place in Sacramento called Alberto's, and if you got anyone in Alberto's is hearing this, I do accept free shine for this plug. That is probably one of the best burritos to me in Sacramento. There's also a place right by where I get my haircut called Carolina's that has some of the best burritos in Sacramento. So either one of those two, Alberto's or Carolina's, I'll definitely put those two over as some of the best burritos in Sacramento.
There we go, Ryan. It was great having you on.
You as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity, man. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I had a great time. We'll have to do it again. Thanks. So everybody, that was Ryan Anderson from the Gully Blanchard podcast. All those links to everything he was talking about at the end, to the links to find the show, they'll all be there. Their Twitter links will all be in the show description, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you go to the Federation podcast on mofudge.com to listen to all of our shows, including our recent SmackDown 6 episode, which covered the November 14th, 2002 edition of SmackDown, headlined by a Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle match, overshadowed by an Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio match. So check that out. That came out on Friday. We'll be back with our Survivor Series 2002 episode this week. Follow us on Twitter, the Federation Podcast. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Donate on our Patreon page. That's if you got the money and if you like what we do. If you don't care, then don't donate. I don't care. Make sure you check out fam.us. Get your tweets from Kurt Angle, Honky Tonk Man, Jake the Snake Roberts. Make your woman Randy in the panties. But I'm Tyler Fudge, and I'll see you guys next week.
Lucha!